1, 2, 1, 2. Let's take a little breath now. We're going to talk about seeking and finding. So what you want to do right now is just ask yourself the two questions that the Course in Miracles says that we should always ask ourselves in any situation, which is, what do I treasure? And how much do I treasure it? What do I treasure? What do you treasure? And how much do you treasure what you treasure? Do you treasure your peace for real? Do you treasure your happiness for real? Do you treasure your happiness? How much do you treasure it? Do you give it away? Do you give your peace away several times a day? Do you give your peace away several times a day? Do you give your peace away several times a day? Do you give your peace away? How much do you treasure it? What do you treasure? What do you treasure? How much do you treasure it? What do you treasure? How much do you treasure it? Aren't you just loving this weather? It's just wonderful, inspirational. I'm going to be in the Course in Miracles on page, in the Foundation of the Inner Peace version, I'm going to be on page 223. And I'm going to be on a section called Seeking and Finding. If you're here for the first time, the only guidelines to this class is that you don't have to believe it, you don't have to accept it, you don't have to welcome it. Some of it might be hard for you to believe, some of it might be quite startling. But if you use it and don't analyze it to death and you use it, you'll see that the ideas in the Course in Miracles are true. So before I get into seeking and finding, it says a lot. It's on page 223, chapter 12, section 4. Chapter 12, section 4. It talks a lot about the ego. And so what I want to do today, before I get into it, is to kind of clarify the ego. The ego is the part of you that thinks that you are separate and a body. The ego is the part of you that thinks you are separate and a body. The ego is the part of you that feels fear, that has fearful thoughts, upsetting thoughts. The ego is the part of you that's unaware of what true love is. So when it says the ego, it's just another way of saying the fearful mind, the mind that thinks it's separate. Because this section specifically talks about love. And it has some very powerful thoughts about it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the paragraph, cover about 10 minutes or so of material, and then I'm going to throw it open for a question or a discussion if it's something you want to ask about, and then I'm going to push forward in the material. What I like to do in the Course the most is get a chance to hear it, because I find that many people don't read the Course because they see it as being very difficult to read. So in many Course in Miracles groups, you essentially have a lot of people analyzing the book that haven't read it. And they're trying to interpret it on the spot as they read it. And so a lot of times it's sort of like the blind leading the blind, you know. And so people walk away from the Course class more confused than when they started, because they missed the simplicity of it. And the simplicity of it is what makes it difficult, because it's so simple in what it's saying, that a person either has to go, I'm either going to do it or I'm not going to do it. I'm going to choose to do it, I'm going to choose to, but they can't really get that they don't understand the simple concept. So the mind loves to pretend like the Course is this really hard thing to read because it uses Christian terminology to describe universal spiritual themes. So the first sentence in that section, it says, which I think is great, it starts off by saying, the fearful mind, I'm going to say the fearful mind, the frightened mind, or I might use the term unaware mind, the ego, is certain that love is dangerous. And that love is dangerous, that's your ego's central teaching. Now, the part of you that's afraid of love never puts it this way. On the contrary, everybody who believes that being separate and special, and I'm going to use Course in Miracles definitions for these terms if you're following along with me. Those who believe that love is separate or feel special, they believe that being special, everyone who believes that being special is salvation, that being special is the key to happiness, seems to be intensely engaged in the search for love. It looks like there are a lot of separate people running around desperately searching for love. And then the Course says, yet the ego, the frightened person, the frightened mind, the person that doesn't know what love really is, the ego part of the mind, though encouraging, there's a part of your mind that encourages the search for love very actively. There's a part of the mind that's always telling you, find that love, get that love, but it just makes one proviso, don't find it. So there's a part of the mind that's always telling people to look for love, but that same part of the mind is also making sure that they don't find it. And so the dictates of the part of a person that doesn't love them, the dictates of a person who doesn't know what love really is to seek and do not find it. It says this is the one promise that the fearful part of your mind will hold out to you, and it's the one promise that your ego is going to keep. It's your ego, it's the part of your mind that's always trying to get you to search for things that you don't find. It's the part of you that always is seeking, but it's never satisfied because it never finds the love, the joy, and the happiness that it's seeking. So if just for a minute, if you visualize that and you think about yourself and you think about your friends and you think about your relatives and you think about the movies and you think about TV and you see everything that I just said is absolutely true. There are people intensely engaged in the search for love and happiness and peace who don't seem to really find it. And so it says, for the ego pursues its goal with fanatic insistence, and your ego's judgment, though severely impaired, is completely consistent. So even though the part of you that doesn't know what love is severely impaired because it's always trying to get people to seek for something that they do not find, it's consistent because you've been consistently seeking for what you have not found. I've been consistently looking for that permanent. Now, I'm not talking about the kind of love we're talking about. I'm not talking about the kind of love that's based on coming and going, up and down. 1 minute you got it, 1 minute you don't have it. I'm not talking about our kind of love. we're talking about the real deal. The Course in Miracles is talking about the real love that is completely unconditional, completely consistent, completely comes from within, and has nothing to do with anybody outside of you fulfilling any scripts that you have for them, or as a matter of fact, anything outside of you fulfilling the script that you've made for it. So he says, so the search the ego undertakes is therefore bound to be defeated. The search that the ego undertakes is bound to be defeated. And since the ego also teaches you that it's your identification, the guidance of your ego leads you to a journey which must end in perceived self-defeat. The part of me that is afraid of love but is seeking love is going to see itself as being defeated in its search for love. If I'm searching for what I'm really afraid of, then the Course in Miracles says you don't really want something that you are afraid of. So in the answer to prayer, it says anything that you ask for in fear is not something you really want. So if you say, I want love, but you know that it scares you to death if someone seems like they're interested in you and giving you love, then it says you're asking for what you are afraid of. And so it says, for the ego, why? Because the ego, the mind that thinks it's separate from God, the mind that thinks it's separate from everybody else, he says that mind cannot love. And so in its frantic search for love, the person that is insecure and afraid is actually seeking what it's afraid to find. So if you haven't dealt with your own issues in terms of letting go of your own lack of love for yourself, then you actually would be afraid to find true love. And so the Course says the search is inevitable because the ego is part of your mind. And because of its source, the ego cannot wholly be split off. You're the one that's making up your own fear and your own sense of separation. So all of your fear thoughts are part of your own mind. So therefore, your ego is a part of your own thinking because your fears are being sourced by you. So it says, or you wouldn't even believe it at all. The only reason why we believe our fears is because we're causing them. The only reason why you believe what you are afraid of is because you're causing that fear of what you are afraid of. No matter what somebody's saying is happening in the world, you don't have to be afraid of it. Fear is always internally generated. Always. There is no such thing as your fear being caused by anything outside of you. Your fear is always being caused by you. All of your fears are being caused by you. All of your fears are 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 caused by you. How do you know that's true? Because I might have a fear of water and you don't have a fear of water, but there's the water. So the water isn't causing the fear, is it? It's really me causing my fear of water. So there is no fear that you have that's being caused by the thing outside of you. There are people who have faced physical death without fear. So just because somebody was in front of them getting ready to shoot them, there are people who did not respond to that with fear. So you can't say there's some things you just have to be afraid of. There are no things you just have to be afraid of. You're always causing your own fear. But it also means you're also always causing your own love. That's just as true from the other end of the spectrum also. That anytime you're feeling love and happiness, it's not coming from anybody outside of you either. That person may be such a catalyst to you that you give yourself a lot of happiness when you're with them, and then you'll deceive yourself into saying, my God, you really caused that happiness that I'm going through, so I got to get you. I got to have you because you're the one that's causing this joy. That's not true. What you're feeling is yourself allowing the love of God to come through you in that instant because there's something about that person or situation that made you open up to let it flow through you. They did not cause it. Now, this is a challenging one to accept because if you were to accept it, that would be the end of your unhappiness for the rest of your life. So if you are a person who, for whatever reason, bought into the teachings of the world, which tells us that we're sinful, guilty, and not enough, because many of us learned that when we first landed on planet Earth, then there's a part of us that believes that almost like if you really, really love yourself, it's like you're almost being arrogant and narcissistic. So the minute we say, watch how people react to somebody who say they love themselves. Or someone who says, I really believe I am wonderful, and I believe I am dynamic, and I believe I am smart. The first thing that people do is say that they're arrogant. Or if I've complimented people and I've had them tell me, oh, thank you for, that sounds like you're feeding my ego. That we're so reversed in our thinking that we would think that someone saying something beautiful to you is feeding your ego. But when you're telling yourself something that's not loving, you don't say you're feeding your ego. So every time you tell yourself something that's not loving, that's when you're feeding your ego. Every time you're telling yourself something that's loving, that's when you're not feeding your ego. So the people who are feeding your ego are the people that you're allowing to be in your life that never, ever do anything to judge you, criticize you, and you're never enough to them around them. They're the ones that's feeding your ego, not the ones who are showing appreciation and love. So the Course says, For it is the mind that believes in the fear, and it's your mind that gives existence to the fear. So if you're reading the Course in Miracles, just realize it's only talking about love or fear. So for the ego, you could just put the word fear. And for God, you could put the word love, and now you got the English translation of the Course in Miracles, the plain language translation of the Course in Miracles. So it says, yet it is also your mind that has the power to deny your ego's existence, your fear's existence. It's your mind that has the power to deny the existence of your fear. So it says you will surely do that when you realize what the journey is on which your ego is setting you. So when does a person let go of their fear? Only when they see where their fear is going to take them. It's only when you see, like if someone told you, if you continue to go on this road, you're going to go over a cliff. Soon as they would say that, and you realize what journey you were on, then you would deny the existence of that by no longer going down that road anymore. So the only reason why a person continues to do something that really hurts them is that they believe there's some benefit or some payoff to it that justifies them continuing to do it, period. So anything that you see as a pattern or a habit that you haven't been able to let go of, the payoff you're getting from that habit and that pattern is worth what you're going through. Whatever that is. Well, that's why you can't stop. The payoff, there's some kind of payoff, and that payoff is worth more to you than the pain that you're going through with that pattern. So it's surely obvious that no one wants to find what would utterly defeat him. Being unable to love, the fearful person or the fearful mind would be totally inadequate in love's presence. So a person who doesn't know what love is and who doesn't know how to love would be totally inadequate if they were in the presence of a truly loving person. A person who doesn't know how to love, that's the person who's afraid of everything and everybody, in any sense of intimacy, and totally not trusting anything or anyone. A regular person. Okay. It's called the regular person. That's the code name, regular person. Okay. That person would be totally inadequate. I've frightened people more by becoming more loving than I ever did by being in my ego and fearful and attacking and asking people to sacrifice. People are more suspicious of people who are, let me clarify that. People who are afraid are more suspicious of me than ever before. There's got to be a game. Earl's got to have a game he's running down. You know, it's something he's trying to get from trying to be such a loving guy. You know, he's trying to manipulate you some kind of way. You know, this is a cult. You know, he's trying to get all your money. You know what I'm saying? It's somebody who doesn't know what love is. If they're in the presence of a loving person, the first thing they feel is distrust and suspicion, and they feel uneasy. They actually feel more peace, illusion of peace around people who are suspicious, who do project, who are angry, because that's familiar. So that's one of the reasons why it's hard to let go of a pattern. Because if you built a life around a pattern, let's say you built your life around, you can't really open up to people. So you built a whole life around operating within that paradigm. And all of a sudden, you're in the presence of someone that's totally loving and totally trustworthy. You don't know how to deal with that. So then that scares you even more. I know how to be suspicious of you all. I don't know how to trust each and every one of you completely. So even though I'm studying something that's about me trusting each and every one of you completely, I'm actually seeking what I'm afraid to find, because then I have to actually become vulnerable and open myself up to you completely. So it'd be easier just to keep the suspicious people around me so I can feel justified about not being open, and then I can pretend that I'm really this open, loving person that just hasn't found anybody that I could really be intimate with yet. So if you're afraid of intimacy, the most fearful person to you would be a person that you could truly be intimate with, because that's what you're afraid of. So don't be surprised if you attract somebody who seems like they're hard to be intimate with if you are afraid of intimacy, because they will be less frightening to you than a person who's loving. Deep, isn't it? But you know it's the truth. You know, because then you get a chance to say all your life, I'm really this loving person, but I just never had anybody I could really love. But if I ever find them, they're going to get some really good dysfunctional love like they never had. Okay. Because I got some dysfunctional love for you. I'm telling you. I got some for you. Okay. And so he says, now, since you would be totally inadequate in the presence of love, what does that mean? It means you really couldn't respond to love at all. What does that mean? It means that somebody who doesn't know what love is, a fearful person, can't respond to love at all. They wouldn't even see it. They wouldn't even recognize it. He says, then you would have to abandon your ego's guidance because it would be quite apparent that your ego hasn't taught you the response you need. You would have to abandon the guidance of your fear because it would become quite apparent to you that your fear has not taught you the response you need. Being fearful all the time doesn't give you a way to respond to love. You won't know how to respond to love. So a person who abandons their fear would be a person who realizes that staying afraid will never allow you to respond to love. So you give it up because it's not going to give you the response you need. So the ego, which is the part of you that's afraid of love, that thinks it's separate from everybody, the Course says, would therefore distort love. So a fearful person who doesn't know how to do real love distorts love. And what does that mean? Like if you're following along with me, when you're reading the Course, it assumes that you're not going to know most of what it's talking about because that's the reason why you're learning it. So it anticipates the questions that come up before you ask them. And then if you continue to read instead of stopping to analyze it, it will usually give you the answer that you're trying to analyze to figure out.
Amen.
Yeah, and that's another error I see that people study the Course in Miracles make. They read a sentence and then they stop and analyze it among themselves instead of letting the Course reveal what the answer is. Because we're being taught that if you are an adult, then being an adult means that you're supposed to use your own judgments of everything and interpret everything according to your judgments and your past learning. And if you can do that really good, you are really a mature person. So the reason why adults judge so much according to the Course is because they're trying to convince themselves they know what's going on. Adults are always trying to convince themselves that they, hold on, I'm going to set this aside. Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, that's all right. If I do this good, a lot of people are going to do that. Okay, now. So I don't take it personally after 35 years. Okay. Because the Course in Miracles says that's the reaction to the truth. You either forget it, go to sleep, or die. So be quiet. Because the part of the mind that doesn't want you to change tries to make you unaware so that you won't hear how to change the way that you are so that you can have more happiness. Because the part of you that doesn't love you doesn't want you to hear things that would change your pattern. Is everybody clear about that? Where do you think your unhappiness comes from? Do you really think it's somebody else that's causing it? Or would you be willing to entertain that it's a part of your own mind that's causing it? A person that's ready to not be unhappy will always be a person who takes 100% responsibility for what they're experiencing. The person who wants to keep the pattern going will always defend their point of view and then project their unhappiness as being caused by somebody outside of themselves. All that means is one person is ready to end their pattern and the other one hasn't reached their limit yet. And so you don't take it personal. Why? Because you know that it's a choice and that everybody has a right to choose every moment what they want to experience and how they want to experience it. Every time that you tell yourself that it's up to you to change somebody else's experience to make it better for them, then you are actually undermining their power because you're treating them like they don't have the ability within themselves to tap their own divine self and get guidance and take responsibility and change their experience. It's also a way to take the attention off of what needs to change within your mind. And so that's why people love to jump into other people's business, because it gives them an opportunity not to look at the things that's going on within themselves that need to change. And they can also think they're doing great things by doing that, so it makes them a nice person. Because nice people caretake. Okay. So they're trying to get a sense of self-esteem by taking care and fixing everybody around them, which is a way of avoiding their own inner work. That's why that's another thing that's very popular among fearful people who don't know the truth. So the ego is just a part of the mind that doesn't know the truth. It's not, you're not guilty, you're not bad, you just have a part of your mind that thinks you're separate from God, that thinks you're separate from truth. It's the same as saying, think I'm separate from love. So the Course says, it says the ego would therefore distort love. Now, what does that mean? It means that your ego is going to teach you that love really calls forth the responses that the ego can teach. What does that mean? Since I can't really allow love to come through me that would be inclusive of everyone and everything, which is the Course says that love would have to be as the creator of love created it, not the way we create it. So since we don't know how to love all and equally, and we don't know generally how to have an unafraid, inclusive love, then the part of us that doesn't know what love is, he says, then it starts to teach you that love is what a fearful man can do. So it says we made up our own version of love. The kind of love that a fearful, separate man can do. So it says if you follow your ego's teaching then you're going to search for love and you will not even recognize it. So what would be a response? And then I'm putting all of the Course together in my classes. I look at the Course as a whole, not just the paragraph before me. So it's saying to us, since we don't know how to respond to the kind of unconditional love that love truly is, as frightened minds, as separated minds, then we come up with our own version of love that we can do. So the version of love, the Course says the version of love that I can do, it calls it special love. So fearful minds can do special love, but they can't do God love. Because God love is not a love that excludes anybody. God's level of love would be wanting your children to eat and be taken care of as much as I would want my children to eat and be taken care of. A God level of love would be me wanting you to have a roof over your head as much as I would want one. I would know that we are one, so therefore I would want you to have every good thing that I would have. I would want you to have complete love as much as I would have complete love. Special love is simply, the Course says, singling something or someone out for your love to the exclusion of others. That's special love. So he says a fearful, separate mind can do that kind of love. That's why we do it. Because we can sometimes have a hard time doing it with one person. Let alone, which is really funny because we think loving everybody is hard, but really loving everybody is easier than specialness. Did you know that? Because if you're truly loving everybody, then you really are not interfering with them. You support them for who they are, and you're not ever trying to force your will on anybody. And your love is totally internally oriented. So in other words, it's easier for me to love you than to have special relationships with all of you. Because that's going to end up with having a lot of demands and expectations and scripts and bargains and all that. So that would be hard. So I can definitely understand people not wanting to have multiple special relationships with a whole lot of people. It's hard enough to do it with one person. So to say I'm going to have 10 or 12 of them sounds kind of masochistic to me. So that's my whole take on having a lot of different relationships. So if we don't know how to love, I think it would be ridiculous to try to have a whole lot of different special love. You know, then you got to come up with 10 or 12 Christmas presents. You know what I'm saying? It's enough to come up with one of them, but now you got to try to get something. And then all of them want to spend the same time with you on Christmas Day. You see what I'm saying? So special love is easier to do with one person. As you know. Okay. So, but the Course in Miracles is saying, do you realize that the ego must set you on a journey which cannot but lead to a sense of futility and depression? So when you're following the fearful part of your mind, the part of your mind that doesn't know the truth, you can always tell because you feel like the situation is futile and you feel depressed. So wherever you're feeling depressed or where you feel like the situation is futile, you can absolutely trust that you're following the guidance of your ego and not the guidance of God. So where in your life are you not listening to the truth? wherever in your life you have a sense of futility and depression. If that's most of the areas in your life, then you know you're not listening and practicing the truth in most of the areas of your life. So what does your ego say? Beat yourself up about that, judge you about that, make yourself feel bad about that. That's what your ego, the part of you that doesn't love you, whenever you discover that you're not practicing the truth, it has one word of advice: beat yourself up about it, make yourself feel bad about it, judge yourself about it. The loving part of you will say, oh, you're making that mistake? Would you like another way to look at it? Oh, you're making that mistake? Would you like another way to look at it that could change your mind? Oh, you're just making an error in perception. Would you like another way to look at it that's corrected in a gentle, loving, non-judgmental way? That's what your higher self would say to you when you're beating yourself up because you're not practicing the truth the way that you think you should. So to seek and not to find is hardly joyous. Doesn't make a person feel really, really good. He says, but is this a promise you're going to keep to yourself? Are you going to keep the promise of continuing to seek and not find? Boom. Now, the Course in Miracles will always tell you what the fearful part of your mind, your ego, is doing to you. I call it, dragging you through the mud and then washing you off in the creek. Like the Course says, this is what you're doing that's making you unhappy. This is what you're doing that's making you unhappy. This is what you're seeing incorrectly that's causing you pain. This is what's keeping you sad. This is what's keeping you broke. This is what's keeping you from having what you really want. And now I'm going to tell you exactly how the part of you that loves you would handle the whole situation and handle the situation. Now I'm going to tell you what your higher power and your inner guide would do to get you to recognize that the love and the happiness is within you. Most people can hear the part that's talking about their flaws, but when you start talking about the part that's about them loving themselves, it's harder to stay conscious when people are hearing the answer than it is to stay conscious when they're hearing the problem. That's why people like to talk about their problems, because talking about your problems, people usually stay alert. You alert and they alert. Honey child, let me tell you all the crap that's going down in my life right now. And then everybody's totally alert. And then you tell your friend, well, let me tell you the way out of it. I got to talk to you later, baby. I got to go. I'll get back to you. What that class you talking about? The Course and what? It's like the frightened, unhappy mind is much less interested in the answer and the solution than it is in constantly discussing the problem. So watch how your mind reacts when I start going through the answer. And then I'm going to throw it open. There's some points that I want to make first. So he says, so if the ego is the fearful part of your mind, then what do you think the Holy Spirit is? Bingo! Okay? So it's the part of you that loves you. It's the part of you that knows the truth. It's the part of you that's connected to Source. It's the part of you that's free. It's the part of you that's innocent. It's the part of you that knows His oneness. It's you. In other words, the Holy Spirit is you. It's the real you, not the phony you. The phony you is the one that's keeping you unhappy. The phony you is the you that never finds what it's looking for. The phony you is the you that doesn't make you feel like you're abundant and loved and free. That's the phony you. That's the fake you. That's the you that's not really you. That's the you that you made up since you've been born. The Course calls it building your concept of yourself. So your ego is just your concept of yourself. It's the idea of you that you've made up since you were a child that you now actually think is you. And then there's a whole world built on that image that you have of yourself. I'm an extrovert. I'm the life of the party. That's an image I have of myself, so therefore I've built a world around that image that seems to create that for me. I'm a shy person. Nothing ever goes right for me, and no one ever comes to me at a party. And you can name party after party and social gathering after social gathering that you've been to that nobody's spoken to you or given you any attention, because your perception is always going to be based on your image of yourself, which is your ego. Your image of yourself is your ego. So the Course in Miracles is a course in how to undo every idea that you have about yourself that's not loving and true. If you want to. If you want to. But you know what? You don't really have a choice. The part of you that loves you is going to win in the end. I hate to tell you how the movie's going to turn out. The movie's going to turn out where you're actually happy and you're totally fulfilled in every single way. Okay, we just saw the end of the movie. Let's pretend we just saw the end of the movie. You walked in late, and you went off in the sunset, and the last thing they said on the screen was, and you lived happily ever after. That's what you saw when you came in. And now you're going to sit there until the movie starts over. And you're going to watch everything you went through until you got to that end that you walked in on. That's what you're calling your life. Your life is nothing but you looking at what you went through before you recognize, I'm okay. I'm loved. Everything's cool. I'm cool. There's nothing lacking and missing in me. If you were to look at it that way, you'd be more patient. Because it's easy to be patient when you know how something's going to turn out. It's hard to be patient if you have some doubt about how it's going to turn out. It was a lady sitting here before you got here, waiting for RTD to come pick her up with the special bus that they have to pick up people. And because she knew it was coming, she could sit there very patiently. If she had no idea whether the bus was going to show up or not, she would have been more stressed. We're stressed because we don't trust how it's going to turn out. That's why everybody's walking around stressed. Not only do we not trust how it's going to turn out, we think it's up to us to make up how it's going to turn out, even though we don't know what's going on. We call that being an adult. Okay. So, and then adults tend not to want to hear solutions that they didn't think of. So the mere fact that it's somebody else that's giving you the answer as an adult can turn you off to hearing what. The mere fact that I'm saying this, that alone can be enough to turn an adult off from listening to me. Because an adult believes they should supply their own answers about everything all the time. That's the nature of being an adult. Is that you don't need anybody else. You're autonomous. You're self-sufficient, even if you don't know what the hell is going on. At least a child will go, Mama, what's that thing over there? And then you tell them, they go, okay. An adult, pretty much you can count on, they never ask an honest question. They always have an answer in mind when they ask you a question. And they want you to validate what they're already thinking, even though they just put it in the form of a question. They very seldom ever ask a question with a completely open mind. How do you know? Because so often you hear, yes, but, which just means that they got a whole nother idea even when they ask. Or it's also, a question can also be a way of being special. It can be a way of drawing attention to yourself. It can be a way of making people aware. As a matter of fact, the course says that we've been taught so much that life is conflict that we associate peace with death. And that's why we say to dead people, rest in peace. Because we actually associate death with resting. When I die, everything's going to be okay. And so life is conflict. So when people start to lose their conflict because they're studying the truth and beginning to practice it, they'll find themselves sometimes feeling wary and beginning to feel a little uneasy, like when is the shoe gonna fall? Because I'm used to conflict and there's no conflict happening. And the main way I usually keep my conflict going, which makes me think I'm alive, because frankly my life is boring as hell. So if I didn't have some kind of conflict going on with somebody, I wouldn't have anything thrilling to work on, right? So then I'll use my special relationships as a means to keep conflict going. And so I'm always talking about my love life, and I'm always talking to somebody about what's going on with my relationship with my children and my friends. Because other than that, I would probably have a very dull, ordinary, boring, routine existence. So the drama makes me feel alive. The drama makes me know I even exist. And if I'm really sick and really going through a physical illness, then people are going to come around usually, and they're going to give me a lot of attention, and they're going to tell me how important I am to them and how much they wish I would stay around. So sometimes people generate illnesses or hardships just to get the special attention that they wouldn't get any other time. So there's a part of the mind that believes that peace is deadly and conflict is how you know you're alive. That explains your drama queens and kings that you see. Because we all have friends that they always got something going on, right? Y'all know what I'm talking about. You know, you got your own. You might be one. There's always one thing after another 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 thing. So the course is asking us, is this a promise that you would keep? Do you want to keep this promise to never find what it is you say you want and what you deserve? Then it says the Holy Spirit, which is the part of you that loves you, he says that offers you another promise and one that will lead to joy. Because the promise of the Holy Spirit, your higher self, your real self, the Course says its promise is always seek and you will find. And under the part of you that loves you, that divine part of you, the Course says under its guidance, you cannot be defeated. So when you are following the guidance of God, when you're following the guidance of your true self, when you're following the guidance of your true self, when you're following the guidance of your true self, when you're following the guidance of your true self, when you're following the guidance of the part of you that loves you, when you're listening to the part of you that loves you, it says you cannot be defeated. It says you can't be defeated when you're listening to yourself. You can't be defeated when you're listening to yourself. You go through feelings of defeat when you're not paying attention to you, your real self. So again, if you're seeing defeat and depression around you, it just means you're not following your guidance from your true self, your divine self, your real self. And it says the journey of your real self, its guidance is a journey to accomplishment. Now, this is the coolest part of this paragraph to me. It says, the goal that the Holy Spirit sets before you, the goal that the divine you sets before you, the goal that your real self sets before you, he will give you. I'll give you a goal. I am going to not only be there with you, I'm going to give you a goal, and then I'm going to give it to you. The goal is your happiness and your joy and your total fulfillment. I love you, so I'm going to give it to you. So when you're listening to yourself, the goals that you set will be given to you. When you're true to yourself, the divine in you, the truth in you, the love that's truly you, then you don't have to go out and earn it, make it, figure it out, try to see how you can make it happen. That's only happening with goals that your ego is giving you. The part that's afraid, the part that doesn't feel connected to source, the part that doesn't know God. That's the part that's got you working your butt off, struggling, and giving you goals that you don't succeed at getting. The part of you that loves you only gives you the goals that are given to you. Now, those of you who are really into doing it your way, even if it doesn't work, there's going to be usually a great big yes but behind that. Because that so undermines the programming of people who don't feel connected to source and believe that they have to do everything on their own. Nothing's more frightening to a person who thinks they have to do everything on their own than to be told they don't have to. Nothing is more fearful to fearful people than joining, even if it's joining to their own true self, which is really awesome. So, any questions about that part that we've covered so far today? Yes.
So, way back when you were talking about payoffs,
yes,
one of the things that I know about the way that the ego operates with me and about its version of love is, like, I'll start thinking about the ego's version of love, and then like the feelings that come up around it, they feel so good, and they seem to feel so good. And so then, like, a lot of times I'll be like, okay, the truth, but then like the feeling, it just feels so good, and then like I give in to the feeling, or I choose the feeling, and then same result again.
Right.
And I just get so frustrated with myself because I'm like, okay, I know where this is gonna lead, but that feeling just like, so
Well,
then,
it led to exactly what you wanted. You got exactly what you, just what it was just saying. That if you're listening to the part of your mind that believes that to succeed means to not give yourself what you say you want, because there's a part of you that doesn't love yourself enough to let yourself have it, then it's going to be about always seeking and not finding. That's a form of self-punishment. That's a form of not letting yourself know your connection to source and who you really are. Every time I got to the point that every time I tell myself that my happiness is dependent on anything I make up in my mind outside of myself, then I know that I'm using the ego's plan. It's instantly. The minute I go, as soon as I get that car, I'm going to be happy. That's your ego. Why? Because you just made your happiness dependent on something outside of yourself. Is that the same as saying not appreciating and enjoying having a new car? No. It's saying the minute that I say that is going to be the source of my happiness, that's when I know I'm deceiving myself. And so therefore I'm not going to be successful in having the happiness I want to have consistently, because consistent happiness comes from within. Consistent happiness doesn't come from anything on the outside. So how would you have consistent happiness in things that seem to be outside of you? That's a reasonable question. Through appreciating everything that you have. If I appreciated this in you, in the microphone, in the class, in the room, in my car, in my friends, if I appreciated all of you consistently, I would be giving myself joy and happiness with you consistently. Does that make sense to everybody? So it's not saying you can't enjoy your house, you can't enjoy your car. It's not okay to say you want a trip to Hawaii. But as soon as you say to yourself, going to Hawaii is going to make me happy, then you just listen to your ego, because you're further increasing the belief within your own mind that your happiness and your peace and your joy is going to be created by something other than the way you are about you and getting in touch with you. Now, I know this isn't a popular thing to say to people, but if I'm ever going to stop being unhappy and really go for real joy, I've got to say to you the truth, regardless of your reactions or my reactions to it. Does that make sense? I can't tell you what you want to hear. And I can't even tell myself just what I want to hear. I believe you come to my class because you want to hear another way of looking at it that you can either choose to accept or choose not to accept. But the main thing you shouldn't do is beat yourself up if you're not practicing it yet. Because that's still your ego too. It's your ego that's beating you up about not doing it. The part of you that loves you would not judge or condemn you whether you practice looking outside of yourself for the next 50 years. The God in you would not put you down about that, because the God in you knows how the movie's going to turn out. The movie's going to turn out with you recognizing one day that your happiness comes from you, that you're whole and complete, and that there's nothing missing from you, and you're totally connected to source, so you're not afraid about being taken care of or anything else, and you're listening to your guidance from moment to moment, and you're following that guidance, and you're allowing yourself to have the joy that you deserve. That's how the movie's going to turn out. But the movie doesn't turn out that way until you experience enough failures of the way that doesn't work till you get to the point that you go, this doesn't work, I'm going to stop doing this. Notice there's no judgment in that. It's like, trying to start my car up with my remote control doesn't work. I've tried it 1,000 times, it doesn't work. I don't think I'm going to do that anymore. I'm going to start it with the key. You follow what I'm saying? So don't sweat this, you all. Don't get heavy about nothing that you've heard today. You're destined to wake up to the truth of who you really are, because everybody always reaches their limit in pain. And when I say reach your limit, it just simply means you're going to wake up one day because you've been practicing this, and you're going to decide to be happy. You're going to decide that you're going to enjoy today. You're going to decide that I'm going to feel okay whether the sun shines for the next 20 years in Denver, Colorado. I'm going to be happy whether or not I make $1 million a year or $2 an hour I'm going to decide to appreciate everything about my life. I'm going to decide to appreciate myself. And I'm going to decide to know my connection to Source. You're going to realize it has nothing to do with anybody or anything outside yourself. And then the weirdest thing is going to happen, at least what I'm experiencing more and more, and from other people I talk to, all the stuff you used to struggle to create or make happen would just start to show up as if by magic on its own. It was almost as if everything you wanted was waiting for you to know that it wasn't what was going to make you happy. So now you can have it because it wouldn't delay you on your spiritual path. But as long as you think your happiness is dependent on having that thing or that person, you're deceiving yourself. So why should the universe support your deception? If I want this relationship because I think it's really going to make me happy, and the truth is, my happiness comes from me, from within, in my relationship to my relationship with God, then why would God help me get that person that I'm going to further make myself believe my happiness is coming through that thing outside of myself? That would be totally counterproductive. Would you do that? Would you help your child deceive themselves about what would make them happy? No. You would give it to the person who would know it isn't the source of their happiness so they can enjoy it now because they know they could be happy if they didn't have it. So the person you can truly love would be the person that you would have love with whether you was with them or not. Then you could give your love without fear because you wouldn't be afraid of losing anything. Because I love myself and I feel love. So if you change your mind, I'm still going to be okay. Well, since I'm going to be okay anyway, I can love you. I can give you all of my love. I cannot hold back at all because you can't hurt me because I know that my love is coming from my connection to my source and myself. So the person who can really love somebody is actually the person who could feel love if they didn't have them. So just be with that. But you acknowledge yourself for hearing this much Holy Spirit. Whoa. Whoa. So regardless of when you might decide to utilize anything that you heard, that's the cool part about the truth. It's eternal. So it'll always be there whenever you're ready. It's not like it's going to expire in 20 years. It's not like the truth expires. So you might want to wait 10 more years before you stop looking outside yourself or give up your plan that's not working. But when you decide, the truth is going to be there, ready to let you have the love that you've been denying to yourself all the time. Is everybody with me on that? Yeah, it's just you getting to the point that you reach your limit. Thank you for sharing with me. And those who would like to share financially online that's watching my classes, you can go to my website, earlpurdy.com, and you can do it on my website. I really, really appreciate that. And those who want to get support and getting past their blocks, I'm available for clarity sessions, as I call them, using these teachings on your personal situation. And if you're open to it and open-minded, I will also share my knowledge of astrology and numerology, which is just another language, just another way for spirit to communicate. So I'm here to help those who would love to utilize it as it comes through me. So I'm excited for you because you wouldn't even be showing up here if you weren't close to that point, if you had not already arrived at that point that you were really willing to let the part of you that loves you take over. That's why you show up. And also, the Course says that there will be resistance to hearing this because the old self that's been in charge won't want to let go of its hold on you, the fearful part of the mind. So I'm having to make it okay for people to have any kind of reaction to anything I say, however they need to have that reaction, because as long as you're concerned about how people react, you'll never give them an authentic expression of who you are. They'll never know you. They'll never see you. And you'll become amazed at how much of your self-esteem is based on validation from other people. You think you have no idea how much what you do is influenced by what other people think or what you think other people are going to think. You know, yeah. We got some more people want to share. We don't want to interfere with that. Yeah. Okay. The Way of Mastery Tuesday night. This is a kick butt class, and I'm excited about going into it even deeper also. So, take a breath. I'm only teaching this because I want to learn it and I want to love you and me. I want to learn it and I want to love you and me. I want to learn it, I want to love you and me. I want to learn it, I want to learn it. And I'm going to tell you something that should relax you. The Holy Spirit in you, the higher power, your real self, is going to give it to you. Give it to you. The goal is God. The goal is love. The goal is happiness. The goal is peace. It's going to be given to you. It's already given to you. Why don't you see it? Why don't you feel it? It's only because of your fear. Your fear. It's only fear. The Course in Miracles says it's only fear that blocks what you want. It's only fear that blocks what you want. It's only fear that's blocking 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 what you want. It's only fear. It's only fear. It's not the person. It's not the situation. It's not the circumstance. It's not the person. It's not the situation. It's not the circumstance. It's only fear. It's only fear. It's only fear. It's only fear. What is fear? What is fear? It's feeling separate from your source, feeling separate from God, feeling separate from love, feeling separate from your true self, feeling separate from everybody else. Feeling separate is the cause of fear. Your only problem is feeling separate from your source. If you took the energy and the time that you're spending running around seeking everything outside of yourself, wanting everybody to change, Earl, wanting every situation to change, if you took that energy and you focus that energy into establishing your relationship with the Holy Spirit, your relationship with your divine mind, with your relationship to your true self, if you took all that energy and put it into your spiritual path, your spiritual practice, you would accomplish more than any of the struggle that you're doing right now, any of the planning that you're doing right now that hasn't brought you the happiness, that hasn't brought you the happiness that you want. So the Course in Miracles says that the conscious mind's prayer is this. This is what the conscious mind says in a prayer. This is the powerful prayer. I'm going to give you the prayer, the powerful prayer. Let me be able to recognize what I already have. May I be able to recognize what I already have. You want to go, I want to be able to recognize what I already have. I pray to be able to recognize what I already have. I pray to be able to recognize what I already have. I pray to be able to recognize what I already have. I pray to be able to recognize what I already have. It's time for you to seek and find. It's time for you to seek and find. What would it take for me to seek and find? What would it take for me to seek and find? You want to put everything in a question form. Try not to put everything in a statement form. And ask, what would it take for me to seek and find? I ask to be able to recognize what I already have, the love I already have, the abundance that I already have, the opportunities that I already have, the connection of truth that I already have. It would be better to actually focus on this than all the time you would spend trying to analyze what you heard today. All of that analyzation, the Course in Miracles says, only does one thing. It destroys the meaning of what you just heard by throwing you into disorientation and confusion. Rather than just doing, he says, the simple things that the truth requires, which simply is to ask for the love, the support, the happiness, the guidance that you already have. Mighty companions, I'm on your side.
Mm.
I'm on your side. I'm on your side. Let's build each other's side. The Course says to believe doesn't mean to be credulous, which is what we think. Try to believe you. It's what you're saying, credible. He says, no. To believe means to side with. Like when you were a kid, you said, are you on my side? You go, yeah. Right? To believe, so if I'm saying you deserve love, and there's a party that loves you, that wants you to find what you seek, that will set goals for you and then give that goal to you, then side with that idea is believing it. All right, I love you. Thanks for coming out. Hugs are available. Enjoy your Memorial Day weekend.